Hi everyone. So today we will be discussing first principles reasoning. So let's before we go to first principles reasoning, we'll do a small exercise based on yesterday's Socratic dialogue. Let's fill a form, right, with 5 examples. So let's take some popular brands and let's fill this table for popular brands. Uh, let's take a brand, say Britannia, right? Or let's take Nestle to begin with. The brand name is Nestle. What are the values that Nestle talks of? Respect for ourselves, respect for diversity.
Can we have tagline as well?
Yeah, sure. Now, this I think is organizational values. Let's just search Nestle brand.
Tarun, can we create a thread builder being the student?
Yeah, one of you can do that.
Actually, I tried, but it's not happening.
Same here. It is showing only teachers can create
A student
thread
can't,
builder.
a teacher can. Anaka has access. Okay, let's look at Nestle. Okay, you can have tagline. But Nestle is a larger company. We look at a brand, right? So we'll take one of these brands. Let's just take Apple brand. It's about simple. Let's take simplicity and honesty as two values.
Can significant contribution count in?
Yeah. There are a lot of them. We'll just take a few. What is the segment? They're in premium segment. One of their competitors can be OnePlus if you're talking of iPhones. What is their USP? Say great design. What is the latest tagline of iPhone?
They are focusing on privacy at the moment.
Think different, but not too different. Okay. Now let's do one more. Let's do PayPal brand. Innovation, inclusion, contribution, wellness. Let's look at their competitor. Let's take one, Pioneer. It says USP's largest market share. Let's go with that. What is the market segment of paper? Professionals and merchants. Now let's look at a third brand. Let's look at Coca-Cola. These are the company values, but let's work with them for now. Yeah, its values would be happiness and positivity. This is what it talks of in its campaigns. Their USP is the real thing. Competitor is Pepsi. Okay. Now, what do we see in all this? activity which we did in the last 10 minutes. What do we see in all this activity we did in the last 10 minutes? This is our analysis. It can be subjective. I mean, people might agree, disagree with this analysis, but what we see in this analysis?
We see the core mechanism behind each of these industries and uh, what uh, what is one thing which they focus on in their marketing and all this stuff.
Okay, now let's say you are a TV channel and you have a TV show and you're looking for advertisers, right? And you like to go to them and sell them your TV spots. Okay. Now let us say you are a Hindi news channel and you cover local news, which is watched mainly by low income segments, right? There's a show which is watched by low income segments and middle-aged people. Which of these brands would you invite as sponsors for that show?
Coca-Cola.
Okay.
Middle age. What do you mean the middle age?
Let's say 30 to 50.
I
would
took
invite
it Coca-Cola, but like, will Coca-Cola come to us? It would be a difficult.
Exactly. It'll partially merge with Coca-Cola. Now, I'll give 3 activities and choose one activity for Coke. Okay. One activity is cricket. Another activity is a music concert. And another cricket, music concert, and quiz show. Which activity?
Music concert.
Music.
I would choose cricket.
Happiness and
no.
positivity.
Exactly.
Opinion.
Because if you look at it, Coke rarely comes into cricket events.
Yes.
It's Pepsi which comes in. And remember, Coke is a bigger player than Pepsi. Even though Coke is a bigger player, Coke rarely enters cricket. But Coke comes in college fests and music concerts and all of that because it goes with its brand identity. Now, if you think about it, what are we doing here? We're going with first principles. What was the first principle we used here? That a certain marketing activity makes sense only if it goes with your target segment and your brand values. Okay. So now, what we'll do is we'll take a very different example to understand what first principles are. Let's write some first principles and try to look at multiple examples of those first principles. Let's look at the first example, which is from design. And a principle is hierarchy can be created using font, size, color, position. Now, if I want to, now let's look at this first principle and let's see examples of this first principles. You have a poster of a competition. What about the formatting of the title of the competition. What is its hierarchy? How much importance does title get?
The most.
Very important.
Correct. So formatting,
In the header,
top position,
Hmm.
large size,
Bold letters.
visible color, if required, bold font. Now let's look at example 2. The name of a participant in a poster is too flashy and is getting too much of importance. So what do you do?
We look at the color, like what color, like
What's
is
the
it in
first principle? Where does your first principle start? Here.
hierarchy?
Correct. So what do you want to do?
Reduce the hierarchy.
Too flashy means
Color and the
more
font would have
attention.
been.
High on hierarchy. Let's reduce it. So steps would be decrease font size and or lighter color and or
maybe change in placement of the text.
bottom or right position.
The spacing around the name, the empty space around the name.
Then you have to add little empty spacing. Decrease empty space and or less prominent font. Now let's say example 3. The name of the product is seen even before the image of the product. We would like the viewers to see the image first. So what will you do?
Change the transparency.
No, you're jumping the gun. Go with the first.
Hierarchy
principle.
first. Yeah.
So what can we conclude from the case?
Hierarchy of the name is higher than the image.
Names hierarchy is greater than
Image.
image hierarchy. We would like to either decrease names hierarchy
Or increase in
and or
images. Image hierarchy. Increase.
increase images hierarchy. So what are the options we have then? Decrease font size of name and or
Transparency.
decrease white space and or use lighter color
Interchanging places of both of them.
less prominent font or less prominent place and or better place for image, more white space for image, brighter image, bigger image. So what are we doing in the three examples?
We first analyze like what is the problem, like what is the problem statement, and what is creating that problem statement, the reason for the problem statement. So
Okay.
yeah.
Apart from that, what is common to the three situations?
We are prioritizing.
Correct. Apart from prioritizing, what is common to the three situations?
Following the hierarchy.
What do you mean by following the hierarchy?
Like we are not jumping on a particular, like we are not direct doing the font changing and this. We are following the hierarchy like stepwise.
You're following, no, it's not, let's not use the words interchangeably. You're following a step-by-step process, fine. But in that step-by-step process, what is the important concept you're using in all the three cases?
We have an understanding of what each of those does. For example, what big font size does, and all those things. We have to have a knowledge of those stuff.
Exactly. So when you look at a poster and you feel that a poster is having problems, what you're doing to the poster is you're like, okay, which is that fellow who's getting too much importance? I want to reduce this fellow's hierarchy. Who is that fellow who's getting too little importance? Let me increase the hierarchy. And we know the 5 or 6 methods for increasing or decreasing hierarchy. What are the methods we know? Font size, place, white spaces around it, the type of the font, the intensity of the color. Yeah, these are some of the ways in which you can change the hierarchy of the element. So that once you can change the hierarchy of the element, then the amount of attention that thing gets and in what sequence people see it, you get to control that. Now, what is the advantage of learning this as a first principle versus doing a lot of practice of posters and learning from practice of posters?
It's like we understanding a concept and using it in different ways.
Are those three cases the same or different?
They're similar.
Those were
They appear similar once you look at it from the lens of the first principle.
Yeah.
But if you're not looking at it through first principle, you look at them as three different problems. That, okay, they're seeing this before that. This is too flashy. Okay, this is not getting enough importance. They appear like three very different situations. But the moment you learn this concept called hierarchy, the three appear similar because you say, okay, whether something is flashy or whether something is seen before the other, or whether something is not getting enough importance, all of it has to do with the sequence in which things are seen. If something is seen higher, if something is getting more attention than what it needs, it's too high on the hierarchy than its original hierarchy. If something is less visible than what it needs, then it means it's low on the hierarchy than what it deserves. Now, let's look at one more example of hierarchy. Example 4. Let's say I would like, we have a lot of text. It appears overwhelming.
It might appear overwhelming because there is no hierarchy, there is not, and as there is no hierarchy, there is not no flow for the user to understand from where to where to where.
Does your current first principle help?
Yes,
No, you need a new first principle.
hierarchy. We need to create hierarchy there.
Nesting of elements. Nesting of elements means like a vertical hierarchy.
Maybe we can change them into bullet points.
Options. One is heading and subheadings. Heading and bullet points. These are ways in which here what is happening? Heading has higher hierarchy in both the cases. But what if we have 10 bullet points? Then what is happening? Hierarchy violated. Too many elements under one hierarchy. We need better nesting. So what do? We bring in subheadings. Does this make sense? It's like
Yes.
you're having too many things under one category. So you create subcategories. You say that, one heading, two subheadings, 10 points. So 5 points per subheading. Now, what if each point has 30 words? Hierarchy violated. Too much burden on the eyes. So what can we do? Highlight
Bullet
keywords.
points. Okay, highlight and put.
Okay, highlight keywords is one option, or
Sub bullet points.
okay, sub bullet points is another. Both are again ways of creating additional hierarchy. Now I would like to ask you guys, what common pattern do you see between what we did here and what we did in the first three examples?
We had to understand the hierarchy, which information is important and which is not.
We understand one simple concept called hierarchy, and we say that our eyes move through hierarchy. Our eyes
Yes.
start with an visual element which is high on hierarchy, and they move to the next element which is next in hierarchy, the next element which is third in hierarchy, the next element fourth in hierarchy, next element fifth in hierarchy, and so on. And that's how our eyes move. But what will happen when you don't have a hierarchy? Your eyes don't have anywhere to start. Your eyes get confused. Or what will happen if your eyes have too many elements from the current level of hierarchy to the next level? Your eyes again get confused where to start. Either in the next level of the jump, you have too many options, or at the first level, again, you have too many options, your eyes get confused. But again, on top, we ideally want one element. What will happen if you have three elements which are equal on a hierarchy? I have a poster of three elements, all are equal on a hierarchy.
Again, our eyes will get confused. Or we go for the right end.
Or sometimes if they're placed really well, your eyes start with the leftmost one. There again, a hierarchy is getting created through position, if placed well. But that can be a little neater if you put a heading on top. because then that heading gets higher on hierarchy. So what is
Means heading,
Yeah.
like heading for the three headings. You mean like the common heading for all those three?
Exactly. Common heading for the three sections.
Okay.
Now, let us see. So we saw a first principle from design, right? Let us see a first principle from technology. Now, let's say you're trying to create, you're looking at deep thoughts technology. Our backend architecture revolves around topics and posts. You save your category as topics, subcategories. You get posts under topics. Topics can be a subcategory under category. These are some first principles. Now let us say you can ask a query with topic name and post name to search for a specific post. Now let's look at situation 1. What is situation 1? Let's say I would like to create Socratic dialogues on the software. All dialogues have same template, different themes. Now let's look at template. Dialogue name, dialogue date, organizer, theme, participants. So how do you implement this on our backend? You have a lot of Socratic dialogues and but under the common template, you'll have different, Socratic dialogues. So how do you use this structure? So what is the structure? You have topic, all posts are children of topic. So if I follow this structure, what would be my implementation? My topic would be
Theme.
Socratic dialogue.
Socratic dialogue. My post would be individual dialogue. And that would be these 5 items would be my data model. Of what data do I want? So I have a TID, which is for Socratic dialogue, and I have a PID, which is that individual dialogue. Let's look at situation 2.
What is TID and PID?
In NodeBB, you have an ID for each one of them. Topic ID, post ID.
Okay.
And Saurav, if you're asking me this question, it means you've not done your homework while you were working with the teams. Situation 2 is you have profiles of participants. They have name, date of birth, designation. So how would you implement this? Topic would be
Participants profile.
and post would be
Their details.
That would be data model.
so if I want Saurav's profile, how do I search for Saurav's profile? I query with participant profile TID and Saurav's PID. Saurav profile PID. Or I give the TID of the participant profile and say that query for name. That is, the name is in the data model. So your TID is basically the place where the thing is stored. In the architecture, what is happening is your TID is the place where everything is stored and all your posts are stored under the topic. So if you tell your database which topic to search, in that topic it will go and search. In that topic, you can search for the posts, and in the post you can search for your details. But if you want Saurav's profile information, how will you search Saurav's profile information? You will say, please go to participant profile topic, and in that please search for the name called Saurav. Now here, let us say I want to get the date of young CMO dialogue. How do I get the date? TID of Socratic dialogue. And search for the value
model.
young CMO dialogue. Then you will get the posts with this value. Now let's look at a more interesting situation. Now a creator can create a theme. Student can create article with that theme. Okay. Now, what do you have? You have one, a theme. Then two, you have
Article.
article. Now, what will you do? You'll look at the theme as a topic and article as a post. So when Saurav creates a theme, You get a PID for Soros theme. When Insha creates an article, you get a PID for Insha's article under
Saurabh theme.
what do you see in common to the three situations?
Topic and post.
Okay. But why are you going with topic and post? Why are you going with topic and post?
It kind of follows hierarchy, like TID is on high hierarchy and PID is on lower hierarchy. So we can query accordingly.
Sorry?
I was saying it kind of follows hierarchy as well, because TID is on higher hierarchy and PID is on lower hierarchy. So we can query accordingly.
That's a different point. But what we are trying to see is, we are saying that when we store our data, we have a structure to storing our data. In our database, we have something called a topic. Under the topic, we create something called post. So when you want to search, you search through the topic. You know where to search. Under the topic, you search, right? So everywhere, wherever there were situations coming up, how are you creating the elements in the database? You're creating a topic, you're creating a post, and you're telling NodeBB, this is my topic, this is my post. Store this as my topic and store this as my post.
We discussed about like fooling NodeBB. What was that? Like we are feeding it as
The way NodeBB works is, NodeBB says, please give me all the topics that you have and create a hierarchy of topics, that is categories and subcategories hierarchy. Once the hierarchy is done, under subcategories, you can have posts. What we do is, even if you want to create a profile, description, we'll have the profile description as a topic, and under the topic, we'll have everybody's profile information as an article. So according to NodeBB, your profile information, right, is actually an article.
My thought process is relating this to something. May I?
Yeah.
So basically, when we were creating sessions and batches for Mr. Hariharan, we had a common topic, meeting with Mr. Hariharan, and under that we had three, I can say, under a batch we had three sessions: sprint with Mr. Hariharan, weekly review with Mr. Hariharan, and this troubleshooting with Mr. Hariharan. So can this be a topic and post?
Yeah, depends on how you create it. See, let's understand the more broader concept. We have a software which understands the language of topic and post. If you tell this software, this is my topic and this is my post, it'll neatly organize it in one place. You go and say, under this topic, I want this post, it'll fetch it and give it to you. So do you have to worry about how you will store information and how you will retrieve information? So you have a library where the bookshelf name is topic, and the shelf name is topic, and the book name is post. The library understands shelf and book. You want to store chocolates. You tell the library, this is my book. This book's name is Dairy Milk, and the shelf name is sweet chocolate. So the library thinks it's a shelf and a book, but what you're doing is you're actually fooling the library and making it store chocolates. Or you might tell the library that the shelf name is pen and this particular pen's name is Reynolds. So when it has a structure called topic of your article and your individual article, that article's name is a post, we are storing in the same format in NodeBB. So what is the first principle? If your database already, your backend already understands how to do everything in the form of topic and post. Any new data which you create, you would like to do it as
Topic and
why?
Topics and posts.
structure. It will be easier to find and easier to organize.
It'll be easier to create it, easier to retrieve it. Because your software already has the mechanism of creating topics, creating posts, retrieving topics and retrieving posts. You create a new structure, you have to teach your software how to deal with the new structure. So instead of creating the structure, what are we doing? We are going with the structure which already exists with us. So let's go back to the first principles. What was the initial first principle? We saw design first principle, which was hierarchy. Then we saw technology first principle here, which is like my architecture is already made for topic and post. So I know how to send it, where to send it and all of that. So any new content which comes, I'll fit it into
Topic and
okay. Now, in both the cases, the three situations initially appear different. But if you analyze carefully, they appear the same. Why?
Because all of them have the common idea behind them. It is the first principles. So once we understand the main core of the first principle, then it's easier to understand the following stuff.
Now, why do we call these as first principles?
Because it should be studied at the very beginning of doing anything related to that idea.
Okay.
I can say it is the base of or foundation of everything.
Yes.
So once we are clear with it, we can apply it anywhere.
See, again, I have a problem with once we are clear with it, we can apply it anywhere kind of a school of thought, because there, what you're doing is you're learning it as a knowledge consumer, not as a knowledge creator. Okay. Let's ask one thing. I go and kick a wall. What happens?
You
might
put a
get hurt.
force,
You will get hurt.
You will get
and
hurt.
Okay,
and the wall will
am I the
also
only one getting hurt?
wall will also receive damage.
I mean, if it has enough strength, the damage may not be
Yes.
seen.
Yeah.
If it doesn't have enough strength, the damage might be visible. So who are the people who are affected by this act of kicking the wall?
both wall and the person.
Both wall and the person. Now I'm going in a boat. I take a stick and I push the water back. What happens?
Water goes back, both goes ahead.
So who are the entities affected by this action?
The
Both water
boat, the water, and the stick.
Let's say the stick, me and the boat are the same entity there. It's just water and the boat there.
both.
Yes.
Now let's look at a third example. Let's say two balls collide with each other. One ball hits the other ball. What happens?
Will deflect each other.
Both
Yeah.
exert a force on each other.
Yes.
I mean, all the three situations, what do we see in common?
Newton's some law that equal, like how each force and opposite and equal reaction.
One
The
exerts-
doer-
A exerts a force on B, then
B also exerts a force on the
B
on A.
exerts equal and
Equal
opposite
force.
on
Yeah.
equal and opposite direction force on A.
Yes. So both the doer and the receiver both are affected.
Now a truck goes and collides with a car. Who exerts more force on the other?
Truck will exert
Depends on the
more.
mass.
Both have same.
Truck will exert more force.
I think I told you guys this earlier. There's an example which Professor Eric Masur uses in his demonstration of peer-to-peer learning. What did we say? If A exerts a force on B, then B,
Exits.
Both will exit the same force.
that is
Similar.
the observation that both are exerting the same force. Now one question is, now see, if you say that the truck, now again here, you are smiling and accepting, but a good student doesn't accept. A good student, tries to investigate, right? I mean, how would you be convinced if you have to propose this as a law? Would you propose it as a law? Let's say Newton didn't and you have to, how would you do it? So would you believe that the truck and the car exert equal force on each other?
No, truck would be being the high, like mass being the.
So
on the
Saurabh,
latter.
I understand the tearing hurry to go and vent an opinion. But what is a more fundamental question to ask if I ask which one exerts more force on the other?
Understanding the mass
Yes.
or the speed.
What is force? How do I tell if the forces are equal or not? What is my definition of a unit of force? If I have a definition of a unit of force, then I can determine whether they exert an equal force or not. It starts with that, right? I need to have a definition of what is a unit of force. So let's say the definition of a unit of force is for every 1 kg mass, it produces 1 meter per second square acceleration. Means every 1 kg of mass will gain a speed of 1 meter per second for every 1 second. So if the truck and the car collide each other, would their velocities be directly proportional to their masses? Roughly speaking, we'll not go into strict math and calculations, but if the truck is 5 times bigger than the car, then does the car travel, 5 times more distance or something of that sort compared to the truck?
No, because it depends on other factors as well.
Let's say the friction and all others are equal. Only mass changes.
Arun, I am not getting your question. Will you please elaborate on it?
I'm saying that if the truck if the truck is 5 times bigger than the car, the friction on the road, everything else is the same. Would the car travel 5 times the distance compared to the truck? Because if our law is both of them are equal, and because the mass of the truck is 5 times the mass of the car, the acceleration of the truck has to be 1/5 of the acceleration of the car. And going by v square minus u square is equal to 2as, with whatever velocity they're rebounding, with final velocity being 0, it goes to rest. So you get some initial velocities, let's say they were equal, right? Then v square by 2a should be equal to s. So if initial velocities were equal, now by 2a, if you take it, in one case the a is say 1 unit, in other case the a is 5 units. So one will move a distance of 1/5 and other moves a distance of x of that 1/5, right? So this would be, I mean, maybe perhaps Newton made this observation and he realized this way he realized, okay, if I define this as my force as the amount of push or amount of pull, then the amount of push or amount of pull on both of them is equal, and it defines that as a first principle. Now, whatever you define as a first principle, okay, put physics aside for a while, let's look at economics. Now, if a lot of people want to buy the same item, what happens?
Demand.
It may go out of stocks.
Either go out of stock or people promise to pay more money and its price goes up. What will happen if no one wants to buy something?
Price will go down.
Does this appear intuitive? Does it appear like common sense, good enough to believe? So you might be able to come up with your own theory of economics with this as the first principles. So now let us say you are an unethical, illegal rice seller and you want to increase your profits on the rice. What do you do?
will add stones in the rice, or
Yeah.
will sell the rice that are not of that cost at a higher cost.
See, Insha, again, this is what happens when people don't understand first principles. Go with the see. There are so many ways of looking at this problem, but right now we're going with a couple of first principles, right? Just now we discussed the first principles of economics. What were they?
Demand and supply.
So if you are an unethical, illegal rice seller, you want to increase your profits, what would you do?
Hoard the rice. Like,
Right? Even though you have a lot of rice, you hide all of it and don't let people know that so much of it is available.
Yeah.
So what will happen if very less rice is available?
prices can go up.
It leads to scarcity.
Yeah.
The demand is high, but supply is
low.
So price increases.
Increase.
Now, what will happen if you're a coffee seller and you want to destroy tea market so that you benefit as a coffee seller? What would you do?
Decrease the supply of tea.
No, you want to sell all your tea, but you want to just crash the price of coffee. What would you do? So let's say you're a tea seller, you want to crash the price of coffee. What will you do?
Get lots of copy in the market.
Make sure that different vendors are getting a lot of coffee and all of that. Because when there's a lot of coffee, more than what people consume, its price would collapse. Make people produce more and more. So what are you doing in these scenarios?
Excuse me, sir. But if I'm a tea company, then how will I make sure that the demand for, the supply for coffee increases?
Pay the farmers of the nearby place, arrange for transport, and make sure all the farmers come and bring coffee to the same place where you want to collapse the price of coffee. I mean, there can be ways, but this is your fundamental strategy, right? If I can increase the supply of coffee, I'll crash the price. So what are we doing here? We're starting with something which we call a fundamental truth, right? Why do we call this a fundamental truth?
Speculating again, it will be same in every situation?
It's
Or
so
most of
basic. It's so basic that you believe that it's true, right? It almost stems from kind of common sense and you believe it's true. If that goes wrong, a lot of your other conclusions go wrong. So first principles reasoning is you come up with an argument which is like very, very basic. And from that argument, which is very, very basic, you argue and come up with your conclusions. So why will the price of coffee decrease if the amount of coffee in the market goes up?
Because the supply is greater than the demand.
Now, this is not first principles reasoning. This is like just jargon blabbering. First principles reasoning is if there is more coffee available in the market, then the amount of coffee which people want is much lesser than the amount of coffee which is available. What do we know? We know that amount of coffee in the market has increased. What is argument 1? We know is line 0. Line 0 is amount of coffee in the market has increased. Argument 1 is now the amount of coffee in the market is much more than the amount of coffee which people want. Now argument 2 is there are not enough people who want that coffee. Argument 3 is there are more sellers of coffee. There's more amount of coffee to be sold than the amount of coffee which will be bought. So people might pay lower because there are more options. While the seller has less options, the buyer has more options. So the price might come down. So the price comes down. You got the 4 or 5 arguments. This is called first principles reasoning. If my supply increases, the amount of coffee which is to be sold is more than the amount of coffee which can be bought. The competition for sellers, the number of options for sellers is very low, while the options for buyers are higher. So buyers might be able to, buy for lower price. So the price of coffee goes down. But if the amount of coffee in the market comes down, then what will happen? Amount of coffee which is needed is less than the amount of coffee. Is much more than the amount of coffee which is available. So the sellers have more options while the buyers have less options. So the sellers might, be able to command a higher price. So the price goes up. You understood the 4 steps. So first principles reasoning is being able to start from the fundamental truth, completing those 4 steps and coming to the conclusion. Can you tell me can you come up with the argument for why if the amount of coffee in the market goes up, the price comes down? Can one of you argue that?
The amount of coffee goes up and price comes down. Because then the every seller would have more coffee, okay, and the competition will rise because there's more coffee in the market, and buyer will the buyer will can go to other store if the seller is not showing.
Or do you see that you're jumping links and you're not able to make a smooth link from your fundamental truth to argument 1 to argument 2. First principles reasoning is that from your fundamental truth, your argument 1 comes smoothly. From argument 1, your argument 2 comes smoothly. So what is your fundamental truth? Or what is your given knowledge?
That when the supply of coffee increases, the price
Your
decreases.
given knowledge is the amount of coffee has increased.
Yes.
That is what you know. So what is your argument 1? You know amount of coffee has increased. Now what is your argument 1? Opening argument.
The price decreases.
That's your conclusion. What is your opening argument?
There's more product in the market than the buyers.
So you're saying if the amount of coffee has increased in the market, then the amount of coffee which can be sold is higher than the amount of coffee which can be bought.
Consumed, yes.
That is argument 1. What would be argument 2? The competition for
decreases. Like the sellers would have more options to go for, and the seller
the seller would have less options because there are less buyers and more sellers. The buyer would have more options. So competition increases for sellers.
yes.
So the price goes down because buyers would then buy for a lower price. What did you guys understand about first principles reasoning now, or the challenge with first principles reasoning now?
Okay, so
Did I
first
repeat it twice? Did I repeat it twice? But did you register the reason? So what is the challenge you see with first principles reasoning? I mean, in learning first principles reasoning.
So first of all, we often face problem with understanding what the real problem is. And then after, say, we understand the problem, we then encounter problems, and like we are unable to go in serious. What should be the like there is the certain problem A, then what would the first impact that the problem would have? So we would have to go serious wise rather than jumping around. Hence, we have to start from the very bottom.
Okay, anyone else?
understanding the the fundamental truth and going with the flow, like going with the argument number, like one by one, not directly like as I did. There might be what you can say, urge to jump to the conclusion that we already know, but questioning each each type of argument, like why it will go from fundamental to argument one, and then to argument two, why it can't go the other way, why it will follow that path only. That can be the reason.
And one simple thing which I wish to tell you is, from your if your fundamental the knowledge which you have is A and your conclusion is E, the knowledge you have is A and conclusion is E. What have come in between?
BCD,
Which are arguments. Now the arguments which are proving BCD have come in between. Your conclusion is E, but your arguments can be reused somewhere else. Your B to C logic can be used somewhere else. Your C to D logic can be used somewhere else. Like amount of competition for buyer, amount of competition for seller, that logic can be used somewhere else. Now you're a seller. You want to make sure your price is kept high. What do?
We would reduce it, the supply. Like we would make sure that not enough product is being supplied to the market.
But others can supply. Supply is not in your control. Your competitors can supply.
Can you please repeat the problem statement?
You are a seller. You want to decrease the competition so that your price can stay high. What do? Tushar said decrease the supply. But question is, you're not the only one creating supply. Your competitors are also creating supply. So you don't have a control of the supply in the market.
But I can have control of demand in my hand, no? So I can increase demand for my product.
That's not in your control. There's a market thing.
Like we should make sure that other suppliers do not supply in the the example that we dealt with previously, that we should make sure that the other suppliers have more product being supplied to the market and ours is lesser.
So here you'll ensure that other vendors don't come and sell here. You're the only one. Ensure your demand argument doesn't work here because you didn't hear the question. I'm a seller. I want to decrease competition. How do I decrease competition? Stop others from participating in this business. How can I stop others from participating in the business? I can get a government
by increasing their market.
Improving the quality.
By increasing their market, like making sure that their prices decrease so that they would not go to
harm them. Make sure the competition dies. Kill the competition, make them shut down, or maybe talk to the government and get a new law passed which will be a disadvantage to them and advantage to you. So you get them to die. So a lot of companies sometimes do this. These are called monopoly practices. And when they do a monopoly practice, you can file a case in the court and there can be strict action taken against a company which tries to get a monopoly.
If I'm not wrong, similar kind of thing happened a few weeks back, I guess. The shares of Adani was increased or something like that. It was a strategy.
I'm not sure of this. But the point I'm trying to make here is, in your argument, right, from A to E, that is going from supply increase to price decrease, you use the argument of competition. Now that competition argument can be used somewhere else also. Am I making sense? So when you learn the first principles reasoning, right, the arguments, the first principles reasoning, they can be reused in so many other places. Okay. Can we hear reflections of what you learned and understood about first principles reasoning today so we can close?
Yeah, so first of all, before we go into any topic, we must first understand what's the main idea behind a certain statement or certain, concept. So to have a better understanding of the first principle, we would have to uh, analyze each of its steps, like what causes that, what's the main idea behind how it works, why it works, and all those. And once we understand the basic principles, um, we come to a certain conclusion. So before coming to those certain conclusion, when we understand, when the steps that we use to reach those conclusion can be used to deal with other problem statements. And this is all about first principles.
Okay.
I have a question. Like, can understanding the how world was before the concept existed, can that help us in understanding the first principle also?
Sure. You mean the precursor to the concept?
Because yeah, like yesterday we were discussing, like for instance, the concept of name, our name, like how what would have been if our names didn't exist, how it would have looked. Then
Sure. That historical context does help because it helps you see the value of that system which was coming, can be helpful. But usually, see, your first principles, they come, I mean, so some first principles are not to be confused with laws. Your first principles usually come from the most foundational arguments which appear like common sense. So when you say hierarchy, right, the hierarchy can be increased or decreased, those are laws. But you can break those laws down and see psychologically why is it that left side is higher hierarchy? Because the tendency for the eye is to read from the left to right, or the tendency for the eye is to look at the bigger items before the smaller items. Because the eye first tries to look for bigger items and smaller items. So those become first principles because those are fundamental truths and all other things boil from it. Okay. Reflections?
I have one more question. Like you said, they are not laws. Then what's the difference between laws and principle? First principle, specifically.
Sorry?
You said like laws are different from like principle are different from laws.
The
So
laws are things like you assume them, you believe them to be true, and you conclude everything from there. But when we are talking of first principles in the truest sense, you'd want them to be so intuitive that you believe in them, right? You want them to appear as the most fundamental truths that you feel like it's only logical to assume them. It's an assumption, but you find it logical to assume that.
But Newton's three law aren't those principles?
No, I think those laws can emerge from, I mean, again, one way of thinking about it is, can I deduce those laws from some basic fundamental truths? Or another way of looking at it is that itself is a fundamental truth, it can't be broken down any further. Two ways of looking at it.
And that's what we are dealing with in physics, right? Like we are trying to find the first principles behind all the concepts, the very fundamental truth.
Right. But in design, at least I can tell you the laws are not the most fundamental ones. Because in design, I think you can look at some fundamental truths around psychology, and from that you can deduce the laws or argue the laws at least. Any reflections?
I don't know if this will be counted as a reflection, but the defining the fundamental truth is probably the most important and tough part of first principle.
Okay. Any other reflections? I would say it's equally harder to derive the truths from it. Okay. But yes, I think that's the foundational step to arrive at them. Anyone else going at the reflection?
Also, yesterday, like you said, when dealing with most of problems, or let's say when learning a programming language, say I'm trying to learn Python, and I will directly jump into print hello world rather than understanding what is Python, who invented Python, and why he did so. So when we want to learn something new, we must first try to understand the idea behind a certain thing rather than directly jumping into learning them or using them.
Yeah, so that's one part, but mainly if you understand the first principles of Python, right? What are the basic ideas from which all of this have come out? Those are the building blocks. Then everything else sort of is no longer a mystery for you, because they make sense with the help of those fundamental truths. Okay. Any other reflections?
Just a short one, like first principle can be arrived when we asking why, and there's no further question can be asked. Like when we broke down things to entirety, and from there we can form the first principle. Am I correct here?
Yeah, they're like the atomic elements, right? They kind of appear indivisible.
But like I have another question. Like for instance, like if we take sociology, like if I take sociology, I'll break it down. Then I will reach to psychology. Okay, psychology I'll break down. I'll reach to evolution. I break down that I'll somewhere reach to physics. I'll break down. I'll reach to math.
At some point you stop it, because then it'll lead to infinite regress if you don't stop. You stop somewhere and say, I accept this as a first principle and go forward. But in some places you say, no, I want to break it down and analyze it. So, depending on the context, you'll have to decide, do I have to break and continue further? Or do I stop, take this as a foundational truth and go forward?
And if we go infinitely with that, we basically reach to philosophy, right? We question such
You
questions such
you
as,
don't even stay in philosophy. You're making no progress. You're just stuck.
yeah.
You're just going into infinite questioning, which is not taking you anywhere. At some point, you're going to pause and say, okay, I've explored it enough. Now I want to exploit this knowledge to, get something. Reflections. It's important that we stop our questioning now and move into reflection so that we get whatever we discussed today, because a lot of topics we discussed today, a lot of important concepts we discussed today. Reflections.
Yeah, so like instead of following the questions, we have to clear our concepts firstly. Like so then we are going to relate the every situation with our concept.
Okay.
Also, when we try to understand the first principle behind a certain product, we it helps us know what type of problem that certain product was going to solve. For example, again for Python, before just jumping into it, if we try to learn about the first principles of Python, we would learn why Python was created, what was the problem in the society that it was trying to solve, so that we could analyze if those problems has been solved or not, and if more problems have been emerged or what, that way.
Yeah, sounds good.
Yeah, first principles in a way gives a structure, like and that structure can help us reduce our time and effort, and that structure can also help us understand the blind spots we might have. So first principles are important there as well.
Okay.
Getting the first principle of fundamentals clear makes you face the challenge that you face further, so that you can connect with the first principle and deal with it. Once you're clear with it, even if the question appears to be very different or very problematic, you can deal with it once you're clear with the fundamentals.
Exactly. You've already faced a problem somewhere. You know the pain of it. Now you see a situation which appears to be very new. But because you know the first principles very well, you tell yourself that this is not new. This is still the same pain. I've already experienced that pain. I know how to deal with it.
Yeah.
So new situations don't pain you that much anymore because you're able to. This is actually, this is linking it to another first principle of George Polya. If there's a problem which is hard, there's another problem which is easy, go find it. George Polya is like the master of heuristics. He's given a lot of heuristics for problem solving.
George Polya, no?
Yeah. Cool. And tomorrow we guys will have one short workshop at 3 o'clock on technical project management, right? So you take a product, how you guys can do the complete project management of the product, right? Write the flow chart of the product, user story of the product, understand what all come in, write the data models, data flows, APIs, and all of that. We'll record it and keep. And I'll do multiple case studies in that of existing projects. I think there's one DT Hindi video also where I explained the project management aspect of this project, which one, social scorecard. If you open DT,
Yeah,
YouTube
yeah. I watched this.
but I didn't go into details, but tomorrow's workshop I'll go into more details because that video was meant for outsiders. I couldn't go into too much details, but tomorrow I'm going to make it for insiders. I'll go into complete detail into how to do technical project management. Yeah. Have a good Sunday, everyone.
Just a second. Before concluding, can I bring another perspective to this, to first principle?
Sure.
Can we say that in first principle, we are doing analysis as well as synthesis? Because first we got the fundamental truth, then we diverge it into arguments, and then we convert it into a conclusion.
We don't diverge into arguments. From the fundamental truth, we reach a conclusion through arguments. See, the reason why we as a society have problems with arguments is we go so much with the motivators and we go so much with dogma that we don't reason ourselves. Arguments are fundamental to how you know, see, someone comes and says, okay, let's say some politician comes and says, giving free food and free electricity to people is wrong. It's a freebie. It'll spoil our economy. What do you say?
Ask why. How?
You'd ask why. Now you want to find out whether it's good or it's bad. What do you do?
Because I need to understand like how economy works. Like,
We also
start with some fundamental truths of economy, and from there argue and say, if I'm giving free food and free electricity, what is the cost I'm paying? What is the benefit I'm getting? Do the benefits outweigh the cost? If I'm able to provide food and electricity are fundamental requirements of people, if I'm able to provide that to people, not unlimited, but till a threshold. If I provide that, people will be healthy, people will be productive, then there'll be more economic activity. There's more economic activity, those are the benefits, and that might outweigh the cost. But yes, if I don't draw my line carefully in terms of how much food do I provide, how much electricity do I provide, then maybe my cost could outweigh my benefits. So here that reasoning becomes important. Otherwise, what is happening is you're blindly following, some conclusions. What if the conclusion is wrong? You'd want to pursue reasoning of different things.
Okay.
And on an average, most people don't pursue reasoning. And reasoning becomes very important while learning, because suddenly, your phenomenon or problem solving or truth, anything becomes much easier when you're pursuing reasoning. Because that first principles, right, they come in. It's like, at which layer are you? If you're in the ground floor, you have only 20 concepts. You've come to first floor, the 20 have become 100. Come to second floor, the 100 have become a 200. Come to third floor, the 200 have become 1,000. Come to fourth floor, the 1,000 have become 5,000. And Tushar, you said you like physics. So this is what Richard Feynman was telling, that there's so much of a gap between the fundamental truths and the final phenomenon that we refuse to believe that the universe, works by a steady operation of such a simple set of rules. The universe works with such a steady operation of a simple set of rules. Why do we people refuse to believe that? Because there's so much of gap between the fundamental truths and the final phenomenon in the fourth floor that we refuse to believe. So not an average person feels that this is too much for me, I can't do it, because the average person has to look at 5,000 facts to understand the world. But what does a physicist do? The physicist doesn't look at 5,000 facts. The physicist looks at this 20 concepts and looks at argumentation and reasoning to be able to move from the 20 to 100 to 200 to 1,000 to 5,000. So your navigation pathway or your road highway from 20 to 5,000 is your reasoning. First principles reasoning, right? Your first principles are in the ground floor, but the road or the elevator from the ground floor to the top floor is your reasoning. How you argue from the fundamental truths till the conclusion. Any subject in the world becomes easy once you're able to learn this concept, right? You take the basic truths and you boil everything down to the basic truths, understand them, and you reason everything else up from there. There are limitations of first principles reasoning method, which we will discuss in later time. But yes, it's highly powerful and it can reduce a lot of overwhelming detail, which we might get into. Okay, that's it from my end. Thank you for joining, people. Have a great Sunday.
Thank you. Bye bye.
Thank you, Tarun.
Thank you.